lads, how's it going? My name is Sir Jeffers, and welcome to my first look at We Happy Few. I'm joined today by Moriarty from Crime More Gaming.
Hi, this is Moriarty.
Do you like survival games? I know I certainly do, and that is what We Happy Few has been trying to emulate for a while. Back when it was an early release, it was entirely a survival game. There was very little story, and it was mostly just survive. Eat, drink, sneak around, do what you had to do, just make sure that you survived. Nowadays, however, they seem to have changed the formula a little bit. They've removed a lot of the survival aspect and have brought in a more story-driven game itself. They've let you explore more, it's more open-ended, but there is still that element of survival.
And I actually think that that was really smart, I gotta say, because the fact is that when they marketed this game, they did not show it as a survival game. They didn't show it as a roguelike type of game where you'd be running around trying to keep a character alive and then start over again when you died. They showed it as a world, they showed it as a cool story, and then they gave us an open sandbox survival game.
Exactly, and you know, I kind of like the direction that they ended up going with it. I did like the survival aspect of it, but it really didn't make any sense the way they announced it and the way it came to be. I was expecting a story-driven game, but with these changes, I've really been enjoying it so far. I got to play a little bit of it already. I've not wanted to spoil it for myself, but from what I could see, it already had my jaw on the floor. The art style is absolutely amazing. Where it takes place is absolutely stunning. If you love old England, old towns, all this, that, and the other from history, you will love this. So the game actually takes place in a 1960s post-World War II English city known as Wellington Wells.
And it's got kind of that Fallout aesthetic to it, which if you've been playing Fallout 4, or you're ready for Fallout 76, that kind of retro 60s nuclear world going on there. It's really, really neat.
I completely agree, and I love Fallout as well, and that's a really good comparison to make, because there are some areas in this game, specifically, when you're off of whatever you're doing, when you're off exploring, you'll see what appears to be bombed buildings and litter cluttering the streets where nobody's lived in ages, but where you were originally working, where you started, it looked vibrant, clean, everything looked absolutely great, but what happened is the question here.
And that question is super cool to answer. I have to tell you, one of the things I did for this game was I tried to complete the world's fastest speed run. And the way that you can do that is just by not taking your joy at the beginning. And you win the game.
Really? Because I know at the start of the game, it does give you the option. You're given a pill at the very start, and it's joy. Do you take or do you not? I know I took it at the start to see what it would do, and no spoilers, but spoilers at the same time. When you take it, it's done. But if you don't take it, that's where the game truly begins.
And if you do take it, then you will maybe be able to match my world record fastest permadeath ending ever.
It must be a very impressive speed record to have. It's got to be what? 3-5 seconds maybe? Who knows?
I think total time, once you're actually in the game, it's like 11 seconds.
Wow, that is actually incredibly impressive. It almost reminds me of the Far Cry with the crab rangoon, almost. If you do nothing, the game just ends and that's it.
And I love that kind of stuff. I really do. Anytime somebody, as a developer, decides to add in those cool little things where they really fill in the world, and that kind of pulls into what this game's all about. It's about the world. This is not a game that you're going to go into because the gameplay is stellar. It's not that it's bad, but it's not stellar. It's not something that you're going to go, oh my god, this is the best I've ever played. It's so enthralling and I'm going to come back to it for 10 years. No, you're going to come back to it because the world is incredible. It's incredibly cool. You want to find out all the stories. You want to find out the background. You want to find out what's going on in this world.
Exactly, and a good place to start with that, and what I really like about how they changed it up, is they introduced this story, but it's not just the story of one man trying to get out of this joy and fake world, it's about 3. They added 2 new characters since launch, at least as far as I know, because I only ever seen the one get announced, but you play through as 3 different characters at different times in the world. It comes down to every character has their own unique style of how they survive, their own unique combat, their own unique take on the world. Everybody's seeing it from a different perspective, but I haven't gotten to see all of them enough to really break them down. But what I can tell you is the general gameplay itself. So they do somewhat keep the survival aspect to it. You do have to worry about sleep, you have to worry about eating and drinking water, and you have to manage your joy so that way you're not both caught by the people that are all high on it, but you also have to make sure that you're not low enough to where you're going to get caught and found out and ran out of town or worse.
Now, in those survival aspects, since they've changed it over the past 2 years, they have de-emphasized sleeping and eating and all of that kind of stuff to the point where it's no longer an instant kind of kill type thing.
Exactly. So before, if you were having a lack of sleep or if you were always hungry, you could actually die of hunger, if I'm not mistaken. Nowadays, it is not the case. What they've done to change it is that should you not eat, I believe it does affect your ability to sprint. Like your stamina goes down. Same with sleeping, your stamina goes way down, and you can still act and fight, but the problem is that you can't fight as well, you can only get a few hits off, maybe you're limited to what you can even wield. And hunger, you still have to manage a little bit, but you have to also scavenge about to find actual edible things. You can eat berries just fine, but you can't be eating trash or dirty meat and various things like that. But again, if you don't, it's not a very big deal.
So it's not the full 7 days to die / the forest gameplay anymore, which is kind of what they did in the first place back when those survival games, those early access survival games were so very popular. Now they've taken that and they've added it into the core gameplay, as well as creating and expanding it out with a story with multiple characters and things like that. But as with any early access survival game, there's one thing that I think you know is in this game automatically just from the title alone, and that's going to be crafting.
Ah, yes. So, in almost any survival game, crafting is mandatory nowadays. This game itself, they've probably taken it a step too far. The recipes are very minimal. There's not a whole bunch of them. It's the actual scavenging and crafting aspect. There's so much to look for, and if you don't know what you're looking for, you're gonna have a general bad time. You can craft med kits, lockpicks, and various other smaller tools that'll help you on your journey, sure, some of which can be very helpful, again, like the lockpicks. But it's getting the material for them. You're not just going to open up a bin and find one. It's going to take you some looking around if you don't know where to look or know what you're looking for. A med kit, for example, you need a special herb. It's a red herb. You find them on these red-looking bushes. And I spent probably 15 minutes trying to find one because I didn't know how to make the ingredient I was missing, and turns out that was it, and I was running by hundreds of them at a time.
The crafting box that they give you, unfortunately, it's just not really helpful. It's not like a Minecraft where you just kind of figure out exactly what you need to put into these places and it shows you, oh, okay, like you don't get that kind of immediate feedback. And it's not like other games in this where it tells you, oh, you need 3 rocks, 2 sticks, and a leaf to make this thing. You kind of have to go out there and figure it out on your own.
That's pretty much how it goes. There's not a menu you can just go pop up like, oh, well, or a hint menu even where you craft something. It's like, oh, well, if you mix this herb and this thing over here, you get, a Band-Aid. And that's something you gotta watch out for as well. Crafting can also be detrimental. An example would be, you can craft bandages. Should you get hurt and start bleeding, you can craft bandages to heal yourself. But if you use dirty cloth, you can actually infect yourself.
Which is a cool thing, admittedly, but there's another facet to this that makes it a little bit, even personally, more annoying, which is the inventory system itself.
Oh, goodness. So you have the very limited inventory size you're talking about?
Yes, the limited inventory, it is... When you've got this many items that you have to try and find and you don't know what they're going to be used for, the fact that you have a limited inventory, unlike in a Fallout where you can essentially just throw it all in your backpack and figure it out later, makes it even more difficult.
I completely agree. You don't know what's going to make what, and eventually you're going to leave something behind. I did it multiple times. You're going to leave something behind that you end up really needing, but then you're not going to know where to go to find it again. The scavenging and the crafting, although it can be enjoyable, is a bit of a mess right now.
It's probably the least enjoyable part of the game, and I feel like, again, they were trying to make this 7 Days to Die, the forests, Minecrafty, in the crafting section part at least, kind of game in this survival early access genre, and it just wasn't what I was looking for when I first picked it up. And admittedly, I picked it up when it first came out back in 2016 in early access, and I've already mentioned that the trailer showed it off to be this incredible story-driven game, but that crafting part still hasn't gotten better. And I understand why they have everything limited, and I understand that they want to make it kind of tense and intense, where you are really trying to survive and trying to go out and build this thing. But now that they've taken out the negative side of not having food and water and sleep, it feels even more unnecessary.
I completely agree. It almost feels like, what's the point of trying to survive? Don't get me wrong, the occasional crafting of a lockpick to get into a door, that's more of a story element they could have just made, rather than made it an actual survival aspect. Now, moving on, speaking of other things that involve survival, you have a joy meter, which is obviously joy being the drug that is taken throughout the entire community of Wellington Wells, and it kind of puts people in a state of blissful ignorance. They forget about the past. They forget why they're doing all this, and they seem to be, they have an illusion. A wool is pulled over their eyes when they take this drug, that they're doing these things that are very unsanitary, very disgusting, but to them, they're bouquets of flowers and absolute, bliss and candy and sparkles and all this other fun stuff, when in reality, that's just not what's going on. They bring this into the survival aspect by having you manage your own joy meter. You can get joy from drinking water, you can get it from drinking certain water, you can get it from taking a pill even, and you have to manage this to get through towns. You have to, mosey on by people, but you have to make sure you're joyed, otherwise they will find you and they will beat the crap out of you, and that's where the combat comes in. When it comes to joy, when it comes to the system, I like it in the fact that it's something that you have to balance. It's the one thing that feels like survival. You have to go steep to their level. You have to take the drugs. But at the same time, if you don't, you can still go through the game for most of the parts, but it's going to make it very, very difficult. That's what the whole game is almost centered around. Blissful ignorance via drugs. On top of that, the game itself, although has changed in many ways, I do enjoy where it's going. I enjoy the direction, and I do like that they still have a sandbox mode included. Now, one of the problems I have with this game, and it's not a great big problem, but it's the number of bugs still involved. There's been a multitude reported, and I've seen a few myself, loading into certain areas. For example, the very first time I got into the actual open world and started exploring around, I was met immediately with a crash. Upon crafting my first medkit, the game had crashed, and whenever I had come to, I had lost a little bit of progress here and there, and there is even a couple missions, I believe a couple side quests, that also will crash you that were in the notes that I was given, which, at this current moment, I think they have it fixed. There was a patch that came out yesterday that apparently fixed a few of the missions that were causing this issue, but look forward to a few things here and there. They are updating it constantly with hotfixes since its release, its full release, which have been making it incredibly easier to manage. It's been crashing a lot less, things have been rendering a lot quicker, and it's been feeling a lot smoother with every single update. I just wish with all the time they had and the team they had, it would have been a bit less buggy by now. But no game is perfect at launch, so I can't fault them for that.
I think that part of this is the fact that it is now out on consoles, and for a console player, having a hard crash in a game is a really big deal, because it often means that you have to get up and you have to go reset your console and then bring back up the game, and maybe your save has been crashed and things like that. That sucks, quite frankly, and this game's been out for 2 years and it's been in early access. Yes, admittedly, the developer has been working on this a lot. They have been working on it a lot, and they've been putting out updates all the time. Every other, 2 months you're seeing a major update to the game. And that's great. That's really good. That means that over the past 2 years, they have been making the game better. And I feel that's because they wanted to get it to consoles, and it has to be a certain level of quality to get to consoles. But when this game first came out, you needed joy yourself in order to get past all of the awful bugs that were in this game. And it's really disappointing to see that we're still experiencing hard crashes. We're still experiencing these major unfortunate moments in the game.
They've switched over from, again, the sandbox to the story, and they've added a lot since then, which thankfully they did. It's made the game progressively longer, which is awesome, but at the same time, they've neglected these few simple bugs that probably could have been fixed with a little extra effort, but they do seem to be trying to focus more on that now that the game is out to the public.
Now, the problem is that when we're talking about a game that crashes, and when we're talking about a game that has all of these kind of weird things, like, let's face it, it's a survival game that doesn't have survival aspects in it, but it doesn't really have the story fleshed out yet, and it only really pivoted to that after 18 months or so, so I don't expect it to have that, but it's not really a full title in my mind. It's $60. And I feel like when we're talking about a $60 title, that is AAA price. That is, you could go out and you could buy any AAA game. You could be buying Black Ops 4 right now. You could be buying Fallout 76. You could be buying Red Dead Redemption for $60. But instead, you're going to be paying $60 for this, and It's incomplete. It is not a survival game, but it has survival aspects. It's not a story game, but it has story aspects. And it's buggy after 2 years of early access. Is $60 really a fair price for this?
I wouldn't go $60 for it. It's on sale as of this video coming out. It's been on sale for about $50 and change, which I still couldn't see paying for it, honestly. Now, I get the dev team. I get there were a lot of people that worked on it, and people need paid. That's how it goes. That's game development. Now, would I go $30? Sure. $40 might be the hard cap for me, and that's like a very hard cap just because of the survival mode they still have. And they do have a season pass for it, which more stuff's coming out in the future, but it's going to be as paid DLC, and I'm a bit turned away from that myself. But where it stands, I can't see paying $60. I really can't.
I can't see paying $60 and then paying $15 or $20 for DLC that will just add more content to content I already am not terribly enjoying. Now, that being said, you're going to be getting, 20 hours out of this game?
The gameplay is about 20 hours, comparative to when it first came out, it was about 1. But it's 20 hours, and almost every time you play through, it does not really feel too unique anymore. If you play the sandbox mode, it's always unique. There's always another way to get to your goal of survival. During the story, it's supposed to have a very rich story, and from what I could see in my own quick playthrough of it and in my own, research, it does seem like it has a very well fleshed out story so far, but it feels like it's just missing something, and I just can't put my finger on that something yet.
Now, the story itself, since we haven't really talked about it too much, I have to say that when I'd played it, and admittedly it's been a while now, so you'll have to tell me, it was funny and it was interesting and it had a lot of dark humor to it. One of the things I really liked about it was this world that they had built, and I really feel like the world they built is cool, and I want to see more of it. So did they continue bringing that in there? Is the game still funny?
The game definitely still has its moment of comedy if you enjoy dark humor. It does still do that. I mean, you could be on Joy and you could be walking down the street and you got your arms up cartoonishly almost, swinging back and forth, high-fiving cops, talking to old ladies, flirting with the women folk, shaking hands with other people. It's that when you're going down a road, but if you're not on your joy, you have that sense of dread and fear, so you can kind of flip the switch whenever you want to. As for the cutscenes, there are still a few that have the comedy aspects in them, again, through dark humor. As many have seen before, where you're having a party, there's a piñata in the middle of a table, and then you're asked, hey, hit the piñata, it's an old tradition. And you take it and you hit it, and then it's shown to be some sort of rat. It's actually alive, but your joy kicks off, and then you just see people eating this fleshy mess. That's kind of like the dark humor of it. It's like, oh, this was fun. Oh god, what did I just do?
Which is hilarious. And the whole world, the masks and the joy itself, the world that they've created, I really want to see more of that. But I feel like there's too much work to see more of that, and the work I'm having to do isn't great. I don't particularly want to have to deal with a 16-block inventory that I can't put enough stuff into, running back and forth to my safe house to build a couple of lockpicks, only to find out that I left something that I needed in another zip code, to run all the way back there and not be able to find it, all so that I can finally get into the door.
I completely agree. It's a lot of running around. You have to really know what you're getting into before you jump in. But if you try to look those things up, you almost always end up spoiling something about the game. There's something to be said about exploration and finding things out for yourself. It's another when you have a limited inventory size. But that is all with the time we have today for this video. How do you guys feel yourself about the exploration? How do you feel about the crafting? Have you noticed any bugs for those of you that have played it out there? What is probably the best thing to do in the game for you? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, my name is Sir Jeffers. I'm joined again with Moriarty.
This has been me.
And again, Moriarty, thank you so much for coming by for this video. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully stuck around to the end. If you did, you guys are awesome. Love you all. And I guess that's going to be it. So thank you guys so much. Like it if you enjoy. Subscribe for more. And as always, guys, I will see you next time. Have a great day. Bye-bye. When I'm not with you, screaming.